Smile when it comes to neurodivergence, because I love my neurospicy people. That is a wonderful term that Linnea taught me, is neurospicy. Yes. So neurodivergent is a non-medical term, okay, that describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. So this means that the person has different strengths and different struggles from people whose brains develop or work more typically. And I'm using air quotes because it's typical or normal, right? I look at the whole world and I say none of us are normal. We all have different ways that our brains work. So it is a way to describe people using words other than normal and abnormal, because there's no single definition of normal for how the brain really works. So what is neurodivergent? When we look at different diagnoses, there are varying types, and when you look at the DSM-5 that we have, the giant manual where we do diagnoses from, it's this thick, right? So know that there are many more in this, but these are the ones that you may more readily identify in the workplace. So one is autism spectrum disorder, and this includes what was once known as Asperger's syndrome. And that again is on the spectrum. So people with autism can be very high functioning versus very low functioning, and they're on a spectrum of that. There's also attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's Down syndrome. There's dyscalculia, which is difficulty with math. There's dysgraphia, which is difficulty with writing. There's dyslexia, difficulty with reading. There's dyspraxia, difficulty with coordination. There are varying intellectual disabilities, and then we also lump in all the different mental health conditions like bipolar disorder, OCD, and many more, again in a very thick manual of diagnoses. There's also sensory processing disorders, again various forms of that. There's also social anxiety, which is just a specific type of anxiety disorder, and there's also Tourette syndrome. So again, these are all different ways that our brains can work in a different way. And when I talk about just my own personal ADHD, and then when I compare it to my brother's ADHD, I think about I was the one who just would space out and just think about all these cool things that I want to do. I'd be in school and my teacher would be teaching me, and I'm like, no, I'd rather be thinking about this other story that I'm gonna tell, and then I'm gonna dance it out, and then I'm gonna add it to this little piece with my music, and just like my brain would be elsewhere, and they'd be like, hey, so we're gonna go to page 7, I'm like, fine. And so I'd have to force myself to come back to my wonderful world out here, because that's where my brain wanted to go. Versus my brother, who just basically did that in a physical form. So if you think about him in a dance class, he took a dance class with me one time, and I was just with the choreographer, and I was doing the thing. He literally just ran laps in the room. So that's how we both have different forms, and again, there's different varieties on the spectrum of what that looks like. But the way our brains work, we use it as our superpower. So for me, it's like I come up with really cool ideas, and then I go to my team, I'm like, make this happen, right? But for my brother, he can look at all these fine little details, even his art, and you just like look at all these little pieces and just how he focuses in on something. But then you ask him to clean something up, it's like, ugh. So the brain works very differently. And so because of that, people who are neurodivergent have these superpowers, these wonderful gifts that are often overlooked or not appreciated within the workplace. But if you can find out what those are, you can really just help support them with that, so they feel like, oh, I'm doing something wonderful, and they're doing something wonderful within the workplace, and then it's a whole community that is supporting their strengths. So now we're going into the scene called Don't Touch My Stuff.